Thanks. Um, I wanna start off by just for the listeners to introduce myself. I'm sure you could see my name is Wilson, but I'm in KwaZulu Natal, Durban, South Africa. Um, I'm married. My wife's name is Grace. She's from Namibia, and we have two children, Michael Andrew and Arawa. Arawa was born in New Zealand. I've been part of Youth with a Mission for the last 30 plus years. And I had the privilege of writing a book called Why Me? And some of you, if you're South African, you're probably aware of that. And so tonight, I'm so excited that we can launch another wonderful book. So I'm going to ask our panelists just to say a little bit more. I just wanted to hear your voice now. I'm going to start with ladies first. Vicky, maybe tell the listeners tonight a little bit about who you are and where you're from originally.
Okay, thank you, Wilson. My name is Vicky Wright. I am originally from the United States, but I have lived in Uganda since 1997, so 23 years now. And it's been great. We love Uganda. We love the nations around us. We work a lot in South Sudan and DR Congo. So we love to be here. I am married also to a lovely man from England called John Wright. And God has blessed us with 3 kids, Aiden and Noah, our 2 boys, and then our last born is Kezia, our lovely daughter. So we've been with Youth with a Mission for about 22 years.
Wow.
Thank you.
Wow. I'm about to move there and come and sit at your feet. 20 years in missions, absolutely long time. Thank you so much, Vicky. And I'm hoping that your husband can tune in Uganda. And then a good friend of mine, a spiritual colleague, somebody that I admire so much. Stefan, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Thank you, Wilson. It's so good to be amongst friends. I know Wilson the longest. I think I met Wilson 34 years ago in Worcester. He was a student and I came and visited the base, and it was amazing just how we connected and came from total different backgrounds, but just saw we have the same heart. And Vicky, I met her and her husband also many moons back. I can't remember what year it was last when I was there in Uganda, in like what we call the bush. And then I had the privilege to meet the young man that we're talking about tonight, Bruno, 20 years ago. But myself, I have been in YWAM for the last 30 plus years. I had the privilege of leading many YWAM bases and helping overseeing different ministries and pioneering in different parts. So this is for me so exciting, just being here tonight. I'm actually at present living in Amsterdam. So after many years in Africa, we felt God challenged my wife and myself. Trudy's from Namibia, and I'm originally from South Africa. God challenged us to focus on Europe. And so I'm now, Bruno and I swap places. Bruno came from Africa as a young man 20 years ago, and it's so wonderful to see how he's leading and how he's growing. And that's what we're going to chat a little bit about tonight. So I'm blessed to be here, and it's nice, Wilson, seeing you, and Vicky and Bruno especially. Yes.
Thank you so much, Stefan. I remember when you arrived at the DTS, I was still, I was young and dangerous, and I remember you prayed for me and prophesy over me. And thank you so much, the journey that we've walked together. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my privilege, and trust me, it is my privilege tonight to introduce to us our author, and also a wonderful friend of mine. I know him for the last 10 years in Worcester base, Bruno. Now, he doesn't know what I'm going to say about him, and so I'm sure he's praying, oh, please let it be the right stuff. But I want to start with something significant, I think, that he might appreciate. Bruno was given a Xhosa, one of the tribes of South Africa from the tribe of Nelson Mandela. He was given a Xhosa named Loyiso by the now late Xhosa language teacher that started to teach him a little bit to understand this language called Xhosa, Tata Jacob. Bruno grew up in Switzerland, and he has been involved with Youth with a Mission Worcester, where he's currently at since January 2000. But behind every successful man, let me just help you. Together with his wife, Judy, They moved to Worcester in 2006, many moons ago. And I'm sure Stefan has something to do with that. We will hear tonight, where they became parents to their son and 2 daughters currently living in Worcester. Now, he's a man of many talents. And so writing this book was just one of the talents that he has been given by God. Bruno is a banker. So before he joined missions, he was into banking. But also, I remember the first time I saw Bruno, he was blowing the trumpet. I don't know what you call it. That's when I saw Bruno for the first time in the worship, and I went like, wow, who's this man? So he's a great musician. His experience of writing this book and everything that came together is from being a youth group leader. That's where his journey started. And Bruno has also been in the orchestra and a choir conductor, so you can see, skillful man. He was in the army, the Swiss Army, loved music, has been pioneer in several churches and business projects. That's one of the things that I know about Bruno. But also part of this book is part of everything I just mentioned, and then his experience in Worcester as a base leader, and we will talk about that when that happened and the passing on. And so for the last 10 years, Bruno has been on the Worcester base, serving there. And I must say that Stefan handed over to Bruno the base leadership. Now this is very funny. I have to say it. I didn't plan it. I led the Worcester base, so you have 3 YWAM Worcester leaders here.
Yeah.
Am I right, Stefan?
You're right. Exactly.
So I don't know, Bruno, how that you work it through, but just with the 3 of us, I led the Worcester base, and then they moved to the new site in town, and Stefan took over the leader base, the Worcester leadership base, and then of course you have been given the leadership base. And part of what happened there is what we will be listening tonight as we start to talk. Now, I have introduced this man, Bruno, with many talents. And Bruno, just to help the audience to relax and just to sort of flow with us, help us to understand what led you to write this book a more desirable way. Maybe if you can just help us to understand what was the thing or the things that made you write this book.
Thank you, Wilson. Thank you for the beautiful introduction. I'm flushing, but yeah. First of all, thank you for everyone that is watching and has tuned in. Welcome. It's really amazing. I see some names, very known names to me, and it's beautiful that we can launch this book together here online through the media, social media. Wilson, to answer your question, why that book? I think it started with the fact that there was a shift in YWAM internationally in terms of leadership, where there was a word coming to Lauren Cunningham and then the eldership that was in place already at that time, about having drifted away, having more like a business type of structure, top down, a pyramid type of structure in leadership, rather than a family structure, an eldership structure, which would be more conducive for a mission. And that move has gone through YWAM for the past many years, and it has mainly actually gone through regional teams and fields, you know, like whole continents, and then broken down to national teams. But when that word was spoken, we at YWAM Worcester, as some other bases too around the world, but we specifically wanted to hear a word from the Lord for ourselves. And we asked him, is this also for us as a base, or is this just on a regional level, or is it something we can also implement on a local level? And we got a word from the Lord, a very specific one in Acts 6, and that came again and again, and you will see that story in the book, where we were convicted by the Lord that this is the model for us, that we should start practicing, start adopting. But it was a long process with many setbacks and with many learning curves, and where we had to discover that, because nobody was modeling us that model. You know, we didn't see it modeled anywhere except the Bible. And so it was a discovery journey of discovering the biblical model of team leadership, Jesus-centered team leadership. And we by no means have arrived. We're still discovering. We're not at the goal. We haven't reached. But I realized that the experiences we went through are experiences that might help us to write it down, but also help many other YWAMers out there, and businesses and churches and whoever else is interested actually in learning about Jesus-centered team leadership rather than a top-down director leadership, where Jesus is in the center, and as a team we seek him, and we find consensus by seeking him and his voice. And so hence the book, where we wrote down our own experience, our own journey, mixed in with a lot of Bible study to explore and discover together. And as I said, we haven't arrived. We on that journey ourselves still, so we happy to receive input and wisdom from others. And hence also that's why I've invited Vicky, who will share, I'm sure, a little bit more also how they applying the same thing in Uganda. And I've gained a lot of insights from her already, and I'm looking forward to hear more from others so that we can all grow in that spirit.
Thank you, Bruno. Normally when people go through those processes, I had the privilege of reading the book, and I want to start by saying that if you listen tonight, just before you want to leave, because I know it's Friday evening, you got to make sure you put your hand on this book because it's brilliant. Now, I wanna just ask this question much more to Vicky and to all of us, but also to Bruno, and it's sort of, Stefan, two questions all in one. If the people are listening tonight, of course, Bruno, what is the overall message? What is it's a book, everybody writes a book. And then the second question is, who is it aimed to? So it's two questions. What is the overall message of this book? And then number two, who is it aiming for? Is it just the bishops? Is it just the base leaders? Who must get their hands on this book? And I'm opening up for the panel. I see Stefan is ready. He's laughing on that side in Amsterdam. Who wants to go first?
Thank you, Bruno. Thank you, Wilson and Bruno, for being here. I just laugh also when I read the different chapters. So Bruno, I had the privilege, as the book was in full written weekly, or I got the new chapter. But so in a nutshell, this is a book about not the way Stefan was leading. I'm a very strong, natural pioneer taking over. And that's the way I was comfortable. That's the way I led. But what I saw, and so this book is for anybody that is going to lead a team, be it a DTS, a small group, a business team, a church team. How do we lead the Jesus style? A better way of leading. And I can see that as they were going through the challenges, it wasn't easy. But so in a nutshell, let me stop speaking. Let's hear from Vicky. But
Vicky. Thank you, Stefan. Thank you, Stefan. Vicky, just help us.
Yeah, to me, the major theme of the book is, how do we be the body of Christ and lead teams and ministries as the body with Jesus as the head right in the center? And that is leads in many places, in the majority of the places, with a top-down leadership with one main director or body of directors, issuing directives. And we were also, like Stefan, we were also leading like that, especially in the pioneering phases, but we were trying to move into, this word of the Lord that Bruno mentioned, to our mission about circle leadership and sharing leadership. And we've been wrestling with that as well, which I'm sure we'll talk more about later. But to me, this book is trying to encapsulate, how do we as the body use our gifts to lead with Jesus as the head right in the center? And I think
Wow.
anyone who is leading any kind of team whatsoever, even a family, can read this book and get a lot of wisdom and insight out of it.
I like what you say, Vicky, because what you help us to understand is that it can be even applied in the family. It's not just there. It can be in the family, in the teams, like Stefan says, in DTS and all over. Bruno, that these two people, because we have to ask them to leave, that they summarize that central message correctly, or should I now take my NC hat on and ask them to leave?
No, please stay, please stay. No, it was very well done. You also asked the question, who should read it? And
Yeah.
Beautiful. I mean, I haven't even thought about families, but it's so true. Families can put Jesus in the center and together, find wisdom and leadership from Jesus. And even, I mean, when I wrote the book, I wrote it with Wawam in my head, in Wawam Worcester and Wawam internationally. But I knew that this is an universal principle, because it's a biblical principle. And so in the journey, I've also sent the chapters to one of our intercessors in France, who has started house church movement. And when I wrote the chapter, she said, wow, it's coming in the right time, because we are moving into something like that. And I need insights and I need wisdoms. So it can literally be applied in any context of team leadership. Obviously of Jesus-centered team leadership, where people are Christians and love Jesus, it can be applied, and it can be a valuable book to accompany you in your journey to explore this type of leadership.
Bruno, before I go to Vicky, you mentioned team leadership and Jesus in the center. Is there an example for somebody that listened there tonight? They says, yeah, I understand that, but what do you mean, Jesus in the center? Shouldn't we do it? Is there, help us to see more. If you say Jesus in the center, Vicky, what does that mean? You also use that a few times. Of course, we love Jesus and he's with us and he's in the center. He's Lord of Lords. But when I read this book, I kind of get the idea we need to go more. Vicky.
Okay, so my understanding of Jesus in the center leadership is, again, like Bruno has said, it came out of a journey of not being satisfied with the way our current leadership structures were in place. Now, we already operated in team, but it felt like there was a lot of management. There were still decisions that stopped with a certain group of decision makers. And, it was kind of a funnel effect where everything got kind of jammed in this decision-making process. And I think the pressure to have the final say and to answer all the questions and to be the solution for everyone puts a lot of pressure, and there's less time to step back and say, well, God, what do you have to say about this? What is your thought? What is your heart about this situation? So Jesus style or Jesus centered leadership is everybody, no matter what their giftings, whether they're, strong and visionary, whether they're more administrative and operational, whatever their giftings, all of them can come around the table and just put the decision on the table and say, Father, what do you have to say about it? Jesus, you're the king. You are the crown. Would you guide us to make a decision that you have for us?
I see Bruno is nodding his head. It's your evening. Do you want to add there, Bruno?
No, it's so beautifully put. I mean, I couldn't have said it better. Often we tend to put someone in front of us as the king. They get the title leader, but actually we really make them the king. Or if I want to even put it worse, we make them our savior, And I've done the same with leadership, with leaders ahead of me. I've done it with Stefan. He was my leader. He was my spiritual father, but I've also put him there and put him as the king because it was comfortable for me. I didn't have to carry responsibility. He was carrying it. And it can also become comfortable as the leader because your word then carries weight, and power. And so it can become a very comfortable place, but it's a very, very heavy place as well to be, and a very lonely place to be. And everyone that is a little bit in leadership will know how lonely leadership can become. But that's not how the apostles were leading. The apostles always put Jesus in the center, and they never had a leader among themselves that was the king. They individually took leadership in certain circumstances and situations, but it was when they had an anointing for a specific task, or when they had experience or a revelation from the Lord, then they would take leadership for that moment, and then they would step back again and someone else would take leadership again. So there wasn't a king, because God never intended for us to have kings other than himself.
Thank you so much. I'm going to, and I want you to think about this question. Where you currently busy with, how does this book connect with what you're doing? But before we come to that question, I just want you to think. I don't want you to be too long. The listeners are listening there and they're saying, I can hear that, but what is the thing that stood out for you personally when you pick up this book? Stefan, not too long, but something personally. And then I will go to Vicky.
Yeah, I think as I came to Europe and I saw some basis ministries were struggling, I was asking God, what is there that I could give? And I think with this book, you see, sometimes we model and we think, okay, like that whole thing, we need, like, I like the word you use, the king. And all of us grew up with that type of structure. There's somebody between us, our pastor, the bishop, the YWAM director. And then the default is all the other people are waiting for that person to decide to say, and so it's so much ingrained in us that the leader feel he needs or she needs to lead. All the others feel they need to wait, and then, but actually that's not the biblical model. That's not a Jesus style model. And so I think just with this book, there's tools that will help you apply it in your place, that you can change the way you guys are functioning, and it will actually be growing. So it doesn't mean that the person that was the pioneer can't pioneer anymore. It actually means he can pioneer more. Or the person that was whatever, brought something in, they can actually do more of that, but it's not just standing back and waiting. And it's literally breaking that pyramid, breaking between us and God. There's not an in-between. And I think that was such a bad thing that we learned from the church structure. And we as YWAM, it was fully part of us. So I think, Bruno, you guys struggled a lot with that in the beginning, because the mindset was so strong that was the only way. Even YWAM leaders were not so comfortable with what you were doing, right? And because that's the way. It's not the way to do it, to flatten it.
Yeah. And I just want to say quickly, personally for me, I read the book, and Bruno, I want to congratulate you. I felt as I read the book, you never preach at me. And I felt comfortable. Even if I don't practice that style, I can read the book. It's not condemnation. And that's brilliant to write it. So personally, for me, it was wonderful that I could then relax, put me in your shoes and walk with you till the end and see if I agree. But there was no condemnation if I'm different in that. Now, that piece was brilliant. What about you, Vicky?
Well, when I first read I think that up to the 3rd chapter, I felt like, wow, this is my twin brother in South Africa. How did we have the exact same journey? And of course, it's not exactly the same, but there were so many similarities to what the YWAM base in Worcester were going through, to what we here in YWAM Arua have been going through. Similar, conflicts and setbacks and challenges, but still wrestling with this desire for a kingdom leadership that would facilitate, as Stefan was saying, it would facilitate multiplication. It wouldn't minimize multiplication. It would provide a platform for more multiplication and growth. And that's what we all want to see. Whether we're in the church or in YWAM or anywhere, we want to see fruit. We want to see growth. And So reading Bruno's story, you know, and I love the way you interchange, Bruno, between your story and
Yeah,
biblical principles,
yeah,
the
yeah.
apostles' story, and back to your story, back, and that was an aha moment for me. The way you really connected what you were going through with the early church went through and brought out a lot of these principles. That personally was such an encouragement for me because we're still on the journey. You know, we've been trying circle leadership for about 5 or 6 years now, and it's a process. It's an ongoing process, and we're not really fully there yet. So it was really encouraging just to see you guys in the same boat, and
Yeah.
we're gonna get there.
Likewise,
Um,
that's maybe
let's go.
also just from my side also, that was the encouragement to see, wow, there's actually another base that has gone through the same thing and is doing the same thing, and that is encouraging because it feels we are the only ones, and I'm sure you must have felt the same, and just to know there is someone else going through the same thing, and that was a huge encouragement. um, and the journey, I think I'm also writing that in the book, you know, the goal is not the goal. The journey is the goal. When you're on the way with Jesus, it's always an ongoing journey. You will reach the goal when you reach glory. But until then, you're just growing and you're being transformed. And I think that's the essence of that message as well. But Wilson, if I may, I just want to keep it interactive. And I see there's a question on the chat. Actually,
Yes.
asked by my brother. He's asking, Stefan, how did the book or the message of the book change your way to lead?
I, hi, Rieto. It's good to see you on and all the other guys that are, I see there's quite a number of people that are listening in on my Facebook feed, but also on Bruno's and others. So welcome everybody. I think, Rieto, what was a good place for me, I stepped out of line leadership, and that was obedience to God. Not people actually told me, don't do it, different people. And I felt God said, I have to lay it down. And so people said, so what are you going to do then? If you lay it all down, are you going to start anew? I said, no. And I felt God called me to be in a more mentoring coaching role. But so, yeah, so in that sense, it was easy that I wasn't anymore. But the nice thing is the tool of this book, Rieto, is to help others to follow this. And one of the things that God spoke to me, and it's a scripture I just want to read for us. It's from Romans 12. And that's very strong that I actually, in my own life, and that's what I'm teaching whenever I teach. And that's where it talks about the different giftings. I'll read for us from the TLB. God has given each of us the ability to do certain things well. So if God has given you the ability to prophesy, then prophesy whenever you can, as often as your faith is strong enough to receive the message from God. If your gift is the serving of others, then serve them well. If you're a teacher, do a good job in teaching. If you're a preacher, see to it that your sermons are strong and helpful. If God has given you money, be generous in helping others. If God has given you administrative abilities and put you in charge of the work of others, take responsibility. And so he talks there, Paul writes to the Roman church about these different. And so it's not one. You see, for us, our model was, okay, now we hope we get one that have actually multiple giftings, because then, okay, maybe it will succeed. But so what I'm seeing there is it's not just, there's different gifting. So you, Rieto, me, Bruno, every one of us have. And then if we bring that to the table, we can actually have a wonderful thing. But again, the way we were brought up tells us, no. Somebody needs to be the boss. Somebody needs to be the one. And even for me, that was difficult, because my natural is, so if you take in that context of what Paul said, my natural gifting is the ruler one. So by default, I'm a predator. By default, I take over. But so God had to work in my heart, and I love, so just the way some of these principles was brought in with what Bruno wrote. So thank you for that, Bruno. And it's a good question, Rita. It's hope to see you in Switzerland sometimes, or you here in Amsterdam.
I want, Bruno, is there any other comment that come from the social media that we need to hear, perhaps, that, or can we continue?
Yeah, we can continue. I just want to extend the invitation. If you're watching and you do have a burning question, bring it in. We're trying to get them into our discussion. And then, of course, if your question isn't answered fully, read the book. You can get it on the moredesirableway.com. Wilson, over to you.
Okay, I just want to, because I want to join here as part of the panel, Bruno, and I have to blame you. I read the book the first time, and really, can I confess, I've got lots of books, but I'm not a good reader, and I went like at the end, no way, I need to go back, and so I read it again. So I've read the book 3 times, and as I read it the third time, I just felt that is something that I want to implement here in our project in KwaZulu-Natal. So I called the guys together. I said, hey, we're putting a team together. And so I am hoping in our relationship, I can continue to learn what happened in Worcester to implement it here in KwaZulu-Natal, because I think with the scripture that Stefan read, with the different gifts that God has given, it cannot be on one person to take the lead and to hear from God and to so on. We have to bring that in because it's the more desirable will. Vicky,
Wilson,
I hear back.
Wilson, just quick, it's a quick response. I appreciate that, but let us learn together from one another. So I'm really thrilled to hear that. And I know you will do a few mistakes less than we did, and you will have wisdom where we don't have it. And we will have wisdom where you don't have it, and we need one another. And so let us keep that conversation going so that we can learn from one another. And then maybe a second edition of this book can come out later where we bring in more, more experiences from different places.
Yeah. Vicky, somebody from social media asked a question to Stefan. How did that book influence you in what you're doing in your leadership? I want to ask the same question, and I've heard a little bit earlier that you've discovered your twin brother, whatever that means, in Worcester. Just share with us a little bit and the audience tonight, just sort of the confirmation of the book and what you guys have been involved and how that is shaping what you're doing there.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry, I got kicked off. Our internet went down, but anyway, we're back. So I was really encouraged with the book, Bruno, because as I mentioned, we have been wrestling with the concept of what we're calling circle leadership, although I'm going to adopt the Jesus-centered leadership definition. I prefer that. But we've been wrestling with it, and it is hard to change. It's very hard to change structures, traditions, cultures, it's really, really difficult. So it's taken us years of wrestling with this. And to be honest, it can get a bit wearisome. And there's been moments where I've thought, maybe I tried to take it too far. Maybe we really weren't meant to bring this to the base level. Maybe it was meant to stay at the national level or the regional level, but to be honest, reading Bruno's book and just hearing his story, and, we've chatted a few times, it's just reignited that passion that, no, this is at every level. And we can do it. We just need to keep pressing in, keep seeking God for wisdom. I think what Bruno was saying, we each get different pieces of the revelation, and together, one step at a time, we're going to see greater and greater revelation. And I believe implementation, getting back to that Jesus-centered leadership that I feel like we long for. When people hear about it, something clicks and they say, yes, that's what we've been missing. And that's the missing link. So it's just really encouraged me at a personal level just to keep going.
I want to throw out, yes, one of the audience that was listening, Sahi Aduwumi, he's asking a question. I want to read it to you, Stefan. I want to come to you and then Bruno. He says, because we live in Africa and relate to a lot of African leaders, in what way can the book help challenge African way of thinking when it comes to leadership? In what way can this book help challenging the African way of thinking? It's a very good question, my brother.
I think with any culture, you have to put the biblical principle over that. So we can't just make a new, okay, this is the highest one. So, and I think that's what I love what Bruno did. He every time took it back from the Bible. So from the first time where the Israelites actually wanted to have a king, and that was not God's model. God gave them a king because of their hardness of heart, but actually it caused them a lot of problems. So if they didn't reject God's model of the Levites and the priests and the judges leading, then it would have been better for them. But I think that will be the only way. And so looking at the biblical model, and I think that's what Bruno did. But I think it's also like you all were saying, Vicky was saying, and Bruno said it himself, and you, Wilson, that it wasn't like Bruno saying to us, this is the only way. He's saying, this is what we've done. Look at it. And that's what I would encourage our brothers and sisters all over the world, in Africa, here in Europe, in Asia, because that was every time what people say to me. And I've had the privilege, I've traveled to nearly 100 countries in the world, and people say, no, but that won't work here. Now, so of course, that's the first thought, and it looks like that. I mean, that's what Bruno faced when they started that. People were saying it's not going to work there.
Yeah.
But that's not the answer. The answer is to say, okay, so that was what the Bible was saying, but let's risk that. Let's put Jesus as the center. But now, how are we going to live it out? Now, that is not so easy, because the easy thing, and that was for me, because I'm so strong in pioneering, taking charge of a situation, I could just do it. But now, you see, and that was for me, if you say what changed my mind, my model was not multipliable. So if I think of the big bases, like a Kona in Hawaii, like a Perth, like a Worcester, like whatever, let's use whatever base, or big church, or big, and you say, okay, multiply it. People are like, okay, but it's not multipliable. And then I realized, but then I don't want to, I want to have a model where this can be multiplied, because otherwise we don't see a growth. We have one central type of growth. So for me, that was then a no-brainer, because I want to see this being multiplied. And I think with this, give us good tools that you and your team, be it in Asia, be it in Europe, be it in Africa, be it in Americas, you can wrestle with this. But you need to know you're going to fight the principalities, because the principality want a king. They want whatever you call it in your circle, that person. And the person, they like it to be there, so they don't want to let go. So yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Quickly, and then I need to go to another question. I'm also aware of the time. I know people say, but you're African, yeah, but when it comes to time, I'm a little bit Stefan. Vicky, 23 years in Africa, you definitely no longer an American. Tell us, you have been in Africa, in Uganda, on an African base. How was the shifting of thinking for you there? Now, of course, my brother is asking, and I'm not saying that's what he's implying, but yeah, it can work easily for Western, but what about African? You work within the bush there. Talk to us on that question.
I do work in the bush, but I'm also Western in my background, and it is not just an African issue. It crosses culture, it crosses, race. It's a pervasive issue in the world where we don't, everything about the kingdom is opposite of the world. To live, you die. To be exalted, you go low. And so to lead like Jesus, with him in the center, really requires letting go of leadership. And so it looks crazy, because like, how do I lead but let go? And people get uncomfortable. They say, where is the leader? There's got to be a leader. Who holds the stump? And it's uncomfortable to say, well, Jesus holds the stamp, and we are all going to seek him together. So, yes, we've wrestled with the sort of tribal cultural systems, and there's a chief, but again, I feel like that's in many cultures. And I think, what Bruno pointed out was, there are some key things that need to be in place for this kind of leadership to function well. He talked about, having a high level of trust between people, no matter who you are. You have to trust that we're going to sit down and pray and listen to God together, And I'm going to trust that you can hear from God and that you're not pretending to hear from God to push your agenda. You know, we're going to share mutual values. We have those out on the table. We value this, we value that. Yes, we're in that together. But it also really requires humility. And every person in the world has to wrestle with humility, just not wanting to be the leader. Sorry, go ahead, Wilson.
Before we go to another question, I just want to make a comment, and I want to leave it there for our listeners to think about it. The reality in Africa is we have 54 different countries within Africa. And only a handful of presidents, when it was their rightful time, they stepped down. All of the rest became dictators. And I want us to think about it because, and I don't want to talk about other continents because I don't have authority on that. But in Africa, this book is especially needed in this time because it challenged that dictator mentality that I have achieved and I have a king and you know, I'm the one, and once I'm there, and we can see the results in Africa of that dictator mentality, where Zimbabwe and South Africa, and we can mention many countries. Now, Bruno, I'm coming to you. I just want to leave that question there for our listeners to think about it. Bruno, a question.
Yeah, I just want to say one short thing, and then I'll allow you to ask the question. I've had a very nice conversation with one of our African leaders in Tanzania, John Mukolwe, and about exactly that question. And I think that will be part of the next edition when that will be written. How can that be lived out, or how is it being lived out in tribal cultures? You know, and there is actually beautiful pictures where tribal leadership lives it out in a redeemed way. Not every chief is a king that makes all the decisions on himself, but actually there's usually an eldership around that king, and there is beautiful tribes that actually are living a similar model, and it will be interesting to learn even from those type of setups. You know, they are there. We just need to find them, and then we can include that into examples. So I think it's all about redemption. There's a core that we all are seeking a king, and if we can find the right king, which is the one true king, then we can be redeemed.
Thank you, Bruno. I can't wait. I just put my name on there for the first copy of that book. I want to buy that one, Bruno, and then Edwin. Stefan, Edwin, and then Vicky. In the beginning, we talked about, and Vicky, you put it beautifully, that this book, household, family, and so on, and structures and stuff. The question that I want to ask now is why? We know the family can read it, and we know the DTS and that, but why should they read it? There's so many books that talks about leadership. So why should they read A More Desirable Way? Bruno. Or maybe, Bruno, we'll come a little bit later to you. We'll start with Stefan, and then we work our way. Stefan, why should they read A More Desirable Way?
I think that unfortunately there are not many books yet on this. There are that are like a little bit topical or bringing. So I think that's for me a good. It's in a sense a pioneering book, especially in a Christian circles like us as a mission organization, YWAM. But I believe this same book can be actually very good for the body of Christ, for church, for other organizations. And again, they need to adjust it to what applies to them. So I think it's a good book that can shift a paradigm. You know, one of the things that I actually like about Bruno that I've learned. So just before I let Bruno answer here, but Bruno have one of his, in the Strength Finders, those of you know the Strength Finders, one of Bruno's strengths is being a maximizer. So any situation you look at, he wants to make it better, right, Bruno? You want to maximize it. And so I think as he was grappling with this, he was like, okay, but it's not just my problem. I want others to be able to also learn from this. And it wasn't easy. And again, so for the listeners out there, the people who's going to read the book, you will see, and I know a little bit of the journey, it wasn't easy. It was sometimes very hard but I think they turn the corner. And I think that will be to see as they live it out, but also as they multiply. That's my...
Thank you, Stefan. Vicky, quickly. Why? Why? Somebody's listening there. Why should they get this book?
Because we want to get back in line with the heart of God for how to be the body and keep Jesus as the head.
Woo!
And I believe
I'm buying
this
it.
book does it.
That is powerful, Bruno. Why should they buy your book?
Look, it's always difficult to self-promote, you know. For me, as a Swiss, we don't like to promote ourselves. But I can maybe put out there, I'm not making any money on this. I'm not receiving royalties. Everything that I'm making out of this book is going into the message, because I believe this message needs to go into the world. We need to hear that message. We need to explore it. I'm not having all the answers, but I'm stirring questions, and I'm trying to bring some answers at least, and I'm trying to just engage ourselves into a conversation and into prayer, to prayerfully seek what God has in store, because there's so much more if we put Jesus into the center than if we try to be in the center ourselves. And that's why I believe you should read the book, because you can discover so much more richness, and there can be so much more fruitfulness in your ministry if Jesus stays in the center.
Thank you so much, Bruno. And I just want to add to that. I think it's a wonderful tool to have with you. If you are out there and you're thinking, I want to pioneer and I want to build the ministry, and I have this desire that God would use me within teams, I think this book is really wonderful. And like Stefan says, of course, we always have to contextualize it into our situation, but at least we don't have to make the same mistakes that so many people make. Now, I just want to go to the media here. I don't think we will be able to get that. I just want to read the question that came, and then it's from a friend of mine, Jonathan Manuel. And here's what he says or ask. What did God put in a culture that is redemptive principle of leadership? I think it's Jonathan, I think it's a huge question. But I think for the time that we're having, we will not be able to answer that right now. What I want to come, as we come sort of to the conclusion of this evening of sitting around the table like we're doing it in Africa and just talk. Bruno, is there anything that you want to mention before I go to sort of concluding in my last? I just want to say to the people out there, if you just little bit patience, within the next 2 seconds, we will let you know where you can get the book. Don't worry, we will not stop until we know it, because we want you to buy the book. I'm willing to buy for 2 people the book because I believe in it and I think it's going to bless you. So Bruno, that's my pledge. I will buy for 2 people the book, and they just need to connect with me. My name is Wilson. I'm on Facebook, but obviously if there's 100 of you, I am only buying for 2. Here's the question that the people are leading us as we come and in concluding, Bruno. It's sort of 3 questions in one. Where can people get this book? That's the first question. But wait, the second one is, if I know where I can get it, how much will this book cost? And Bruno, I went up on the internet, which you're going to tell them now, and then I saw give as you want, and I went like, what? Are you crazy? It's like putting milk outside and saying to the people, just pay what you want. My friend, there's no money coming back. Explain that. What did you mean? So it's sort of 3 questions in one. Where can we find the book? How much is it? And then the last question is.
Yes, thank you, Wilson. So the book is available as of now. It's available in the book stores online. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it in different online stores. You can order it. It will be shipped to your doorsteps. I think no matter where you are in the world, but it's probably coming with a cost in terms of the shipping. But then, of course, and the physical book is $10, $9.99. that's the price I put out there. But obviously the bookstores can make their own price, but that's sort of the retail price. I'm ordering a batch in South Africa, which I will distribute within South Africa myself. So soon, I don't have them yet, but probably within the next week or two, I will have them here physically, and then people can get it from me as well if they are in South Africa. But then there's the ebook. So the ebook is very easy to get. You just go to, you can also get it on Amazon, and on Amazon, I haven't found it yet, but it will be on Amazon eventually, but you can get it on Kobo and on other medias. But the best way to actually go and get the ebook is you go to that webpage up here, moredesirableway.com, and then you can download the book there straight from the website in ebook format, EPUB format, or as a PDF, which can also run on the Kindle, and then you can read it there as an ebook. And the ebook is priced at $4.99, I think, or $3.99. I'm not sure now. I think it's $4.99. But you will see, and that's where you were heading towards, Wilson. I have an option there called Pay What Feels Right. Why do I do that? I do that because, and I only do it with the ebook. I can't do it with the physical book because the physical book has production costs involved, right? The ebook also has production costs, but those I've covered and they were once off. And now I'm doing it Pay What Feels Right because I don't want to give the book for free because then it's not worth anything. Although I want to make it available to everyone, and therefore I encourage you to pay what you can or what feels right. And that might be something totally different for someone on Wikispace in Uganda than for someone in Kona, Hawaii, or in Worcester or in Switzerland or wherever they are. And so your budget might look different. So to just charge a general fee of $5, I find is not fair because everyone is in a different circumstance. Also, it gives you the opportunity to download the book first and read it. And if you don't like it, you can just delete it from your computer. And then I don't expect you to pay. If you feel this was rubbish and it wasn't worth it, then don't pay by all means if you don't want that message to go out. But if you've read it and you feel, wow, this was actually really valuable, you might even want to pay more than the $5. You might want to pay $50 or whatever, because that money will be invested into new books and probably even physical copies that can be given away or can be given cheaper so that the message can spread. And so, yeah, that's the heart of it. Share One, as you see, that's our publisher. Share One is about buying two and sharing one, giving one away. And it's the spirit of generosity. So Pay What Feels Right is really to trust in your generosity, but at the same time enabling you for your economical situation, so that you can still freely give, but you're not restricted to a currency, a particular currency.
Bruno, I'm going to now, it's 8 o'clock, 1 minute past 8. We said 8 o'clock, so we are very Swiss in terms of our time. But I want to first thank the panelists for being here. Stefan, you look so good. Vicky, it was nice to meet you. And Bruno, I'll see you soon. I'm going to ask all of you, and we're going to start with Stefan. Last words. Vicky, last words. Bruno, last words. Stefan, it's all to you.
I want to encourage every one of you to get this book and multiply it, send it out. I thank Bruno for his generosity in making it. I think this is a very godly, the way you're doing it. And some of you can maybe pay 10 times the book because it will help others. And maybe if you can only give $1 or $2, then get a book. Do not get the book, and encourage your pastor, encourage the circles around where you work, that they get it, so that we get this message and we shift the paradigm, that the body of Christ will again start looking like the way God originally intended it, with all the different players on the table have a voice, so that we can multiply and go forward. So please get this book and share it with others, because I believe this is going to be good.
Thank you, Stefan. Vicky?
Amen. Yes, I also want to just give my public endorsement and show I believe in this book so much that I want to buy it for all 13 members of our leadership circle team. on our base in Aurora to keep the conversation going, to keep pressing in and seeing what else, what's the next step? What's the next step? And we are hanging on to this vision of growth and multiplication in the global body of Christ. So if you want to see multiplication in your life, your ministry, your teams, buy the book, absorb the principles, ask God to speak. How does it apply to your situation? That's my
As an author,
belief.
as an author to another author, well done, Bruno. Congratulations. I know he hasn't asked it, but I want to ask you as you listen tonight, if you do buy the book, it's always good to give feedback. Find Bruno on his different social hubs and just send him a message. Hey, I've read the book and this is what I thought. And I think it will help him even to work with the second edition. Bruno, you got the last word. I want to thank all of you. It was a wonderful time, Vicky. I would love to come and visit you guys there when Corona is over. Bruno, you've got the last say. You are the man.
Thank you. So yeah, Wilson, you addressed something really, really important. I'd like to actually engage in conversation. So on my webpage up here, moredesirableway.com, there's also a section where you can give feedback and not basically just, I mean, it will be great to hear feedback, your compliments and your disagreements and so on, but I'd really like to hear your story. If you have started applying this principle with or without the book, I don't mind. But if you are in team leadership where Jesus is being put into the center, share your story with me on that webpage, because then I can learn from you, and maybe others will be starting also to be able to learn from you. We can connect, we can network. The more we can network, the less we are alone. And as I said, maybe there will be a second edition. I can't promise it yet, but I do have a lot of stuff still on my heart that I would like to write down in that. But if I do, then I would love to include some of the stories from other people, from other bases, other businesses, other churches, other families, or whoever has applied it. But for that to happen, I would need your story. So please engage with me on the website, and let's network, let's connect so that we can all grow. And lastly, just a huge thank you again, Wilson, Stefan, Vicky, for being here, for going through this evening together. I also want to just say a very special thank you. I've done the acknowledgements in the book, and I don't want to mention all the acknowledgements, but one very special person I want to just point out, and that is Veronica Gluck. She was my first editor. I had 2 editors. She was the one that really turned my Swiss English into proper English, that people can read it and enjoy it. And she's done such an outstanding job. I mean, she spent hours and hours helping me to rephrase, asking me questions. Is that what you really want to say? Or should it maybe, what did you really want to say? And I just want to publicly here also just say thank you so much, Veronica, once more. Yeah, thank you so much for Zooming in or Facebooking in. And God bless you. Have a beautiful evening. Goodbye.
Bless you guys.
Stefan, Vicky, Bruno, love you. Thank you. It was a beautiful evening.
Bye.
God bless you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Love you guys. Bye for now.